I hope that we're gonna have fun, like guys, tonight because the topic is a nice topic, a relationship, especially during Valentine's season. So it's perfect. And yeah, like TJ mentioned, don't worry, it's not just gonna be me. We're gonna have experienced couples as well, three of them actually, who is gonna share tonight as well. And the question we're gonna be exploring today is gonna be all about soulmates. Are there such things as soulmates? Um, yeah, so I think when it comes to soulmates, perhaps we can blame for this idea, yeah, and maybe even like pressuring some of to find that perfect somebody for us, right? Dari zaman dulu until now, these kinds of shows have been very like iconic culturally. Back then, it was like Titanic, yang apa was like one of the most iconic movies ever. And today we have shows like Bridgerton, gitu ya, to the point that even guys recommending me to watch. And especially ada this one guy in Gem yang cannot stop talking about it. Tapi gue gak mention. But the question is like this, right? If it's so relatable gitu, universally and across generation, is there at least like some truth to it gitu, to the idea of the soulmate? And maybe gak salah juga gitu kalau kita considering a bit about like soulmate when we want to seek our partner gitu kan. So anyways, these are just a list of questions that we want to be trying to answer tonight, yeah, and also discuss. Do I have a soulmate? How do I know if someone is the one? Is it wrong to settle if misalnya I'm going with someone and maybe miss a bit in the criteria gitu? Do I need to find a soulmate to have a happy marriage? Gitu? What are the ingredients supaya happy marriage atau happy marriage lah, happy dating gitu kan? So yeah, these are just some questions we want to answer tonight. But before that, let's also take a peek at some mentee. But don't worry, we're not gonna do a mentee. Gua nggak tahu, I don't know how to do it. But we can just look at some results from last Sunday punya mentee. Yeah, so this was a survey that was done last Sunday. Last Sunday, I think the question was, which of these contributes the most towards a healthy marriage? And if you see the result, yang paling banyak was love and respect, yeah, the one in the most left, right? And majority believes that that's the most important factor. And about what I really learned from that session was, it was a great reminder that you cannot love someone actually without respecting them. So great stuff, DJ. But today specifically, I want to look at that other category, the third biggest one, which is compatibility, right? And it's like kind of the idea of the soulmate, right? Like someone who is very compatible with you. Very 11-12, someone who's just like a great fit. And it's interesting, I think I want to look deeper into it, and I want to share some more data on it. So I did some research. I look at some Google search to gauge the interest of soulmates over time. Yeah, this is Google search, the keyword soulmate, the lines that are in blue. The red one you can ignore for now. And or not, that actually reveals that from the past 10 years, interest for soulmates too is steadily growing, right? Whether it's surprising or not. But it's kind of like saying that someone from 2020 is 3 to 4 times more likely to be searching for soulmate compared to someone that's from 2009 gitu. Can you guys hear? Suddenly I had like a screen like saying my internet is unstable.
You're good.
Okay, it's good ya. Iya, jadi I mean there's lebih banyak interestnya gitu. And for me it's quite ada happy-nya juga, right? It's like, like romance, faith in humanity restored. Like that's also good, right? On the other hand, I think the flip side is like kita jadi people yang less realistic, I think. Selalu influenced by media. So these are just some top queries we search for, just to have a sense, right? Your soulmate, my soulmate, blah, blah, blah. But I want to look at this, like, what about the most rising queries, right? Rising kan artinya what's hot now and what's relevant. And when I was researching for this, I found out there was this, like a phrase namanya twin flame. Ini gue baca ya, what twin flames are. Twin flames are believed to be two or mirrors of each other in strength and weakness. They are intensely connected, and sometimes because of a shared pain. So I think that's a very level apa soulmate situation going on. Apa a little bit cringy juga. Yeah, I mean that's just a small fun fact. But the point is, I just wanted to as like that before. I think we can that the world is and more pro towards this soulmate gitu. At least the interest is growing for that idea. Um, perhaps is the advent of like gitu kan ya. Jadi kita kind of imagining like, oh, what is the ideal perfect flawless person kayak gimana, even with the apa accessibility of pornography gitu. Itu I think it all might play a role into like why why there's just greater interest in terms of finding someone that is just really flawless gitu kan. Ya kan? So yeah, so that's just some research gitu kan ya. But now let's look at it also from scientific research side. I want to share an experiment done by this institution namanya the Gottman Institute. Perhaps dari Sonia or Grace or Steph Bubu yang expertly trained in this field in counseling gitu, mereka bisa they can attest to them more than I could. But based on my research, basically they're just like an award-winning based on the works of a very famous and award-winning professor lah, namanya John Gottman. And he's referenced time by Uncle John, who is papanya Sonia, who is also like a doctor in counseling. And I also have a lot of smart friends and follow the Instagram, so I think lumayan legit. So as they are a professional institution, they do lots of experiments gitu, where they track hundreds or even thousands of couples over years, over generations bahkan. And I just want to share the result of one of their experiments. And throughout generations, and at the end of the experiment, they split the results into two groups, who were unhappy and those who were content gitu ya. And the results were quite interesting. For the people who were unhappy, when they asked about how important compatibility was, they scored it very, very high. Okay, menurut the unhappy people, compatibility was super duper important, and the reason why they were unhappy because they didn't achieve it, they were not compatible gitu. However, when we looked at actually content and warmth, they had the opposite conclusion gitu. They actually argue that actually compatibility scored really low in terms of how important gitu. And they commented that their happiness of their relationship too was a lot less on compatibility, but it was a lot more on making things work no matter what the situation is gitu kan. And akhirnya the success to it was from willpower, right? And on top of that, for those who were like the most content and the most warm, the one that was very an important factor for them was that they were building something meaningful together, whether it was marriage or a family or maybe a business or a project. That was like the source of their contentness gitu kan. And I think this result is quite logical, yeah. From my point of view, maybe later you guys can also discuss. But I want to share a little bit what kind of have to say this whole compatibility thing. And this is from one of those classic books lah, when it comes to relationships. He wrote like this: people out there who we shouldn't have a relationship with, right? So obviously to kayak robbers and stuff, to maybe someone else super different to us. But then he continues, but he says that it's impossible to find somebody that is compatible with you. Compatibility implies that both people don't need to change, right? Don't need to change, artinya don't need to grow, which in my view, I think is quite unrealistic and naive gitu kan ya. And for me, I really like this quote and I really learned from it because it kind of like encouraged me that kayak me and Pristo, we're not a perfect couple gitu, and we're gonna have to continue to grow forever gitu, until the last days gitu kan. And I just think that that's such a positive that punya relationship, right? And also like seeing the research from Gottman, itu juga encouraged me as well that I also grow in finding strength during the storm, during the hard times. Yeah, I need to stop. Maybe sometimes I can blame, why are you like this, atau I can blame the circumstance. But instead, I need to be encouraged to find strength during the hard time, that we can make it through and kita bisa um, make our relationship even better gitu kan. Anyways, you guys can have a think about this. Do you agree or disagree later in the breakouts? But gue to Calvin and Olive, our resident experts in all things relationship. Yeah. All right, Calvin, Olive, go pass it to you. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Gio. Are we timed in 8 minutes? All right. Hopefully, we don't go over. Yeah.
Jangan
Hey, everybody.
curcol-colan, bro.
For sure, over for sure.
Right, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to share today. So a bit about ourselves. Olivia and I, we met about 9 years ago in 2012. That's a long time ago, yeah. A very quick summary was that she just went through a bad breakup, and I was single and ready to mingle. So a mutual a mutual friend of ours introduced us. She was Olivia's uni friend, and I was her. She'll put it friend's friend, right? That's friend's friend. Um, before we met, yeah, obviously, each of us did what everyone do in this generation, right? We do our due diligence via Facebook and Instagram. We stalked them essentially. I checked out her profile pictures and found her quite attractive. Even though she wasn't really my type. Olive did her own detective work as well and found out that I'm definitely not her type, and apparently, had no sense of fashion, and I'm too angko for her liking. As shows in the picture apparently. um, and then we met. One day we got into the date together. We met, and it kind of confirmed that we both really weren't each other's ideal type, right? From interests, hobbies, personality, fashion. We were like the yin and the yang, if you want to say it in like in China, I guess. And it was hard for me to connect to her because her jokes was very Indo, and my bahasa back then, like 9 years ago, was like very Chinta Laura, and our interests were also very different. I was the numbers guy and a finance guy. Olivia was, a design and creative girl. For me, it's about efficiency and value for money, and for her, it's about aesthetic and mood. Yeah, our personality was polar opposite. I was very extroverted, and Olivia used to be very introverted. If you met her back then, she would be the queen of RBF, right? And what I looked for in a girl were a few things, right? I was looking for, smart, adventurous, prudent. Um, I want someone who I can talk to about any topic with, be it in about history, politics, the economy, finance, right? Someone who is adventurous enough to, maybe one day skydive or like bungee jump, and like when we go to the theme park, ride the roller coaster together, And when we travel, maybe go to the museum, hiking, scuba diving, backpacking, all that stuff, right? And obviously, who is thrifty in their spendings, right? Rather than rather buying stocks and assets than shoes and bags and jewelries and all that stuff. So, but appearance-wise, appearance-wise, someone who is simple with jeans and t-shirt, right? But I want to hand over to Olivia to maybe share her side of the story. So,
Okay, it's not fair, guys. So it's my turn. I feel so attacked. So what I look in a guy was like good look, because I work in fashion and I was doing modeling before. So I'm surrounded by good looking people. So I'm looking for someone who I can look good together in photos. I want to take like cool fashion photos together. And just like any typical girl, I'm looking for chemistry. I'm looking for that butterfly in my stomach moments. I want like the tingling sensation romantic guy who would treat me like a princess, who would throw me like a surprise. And this guy has to spoil me with Hermes and Chanel's. Has to be able to bring me around the world and those worldly things lah. And then the way we solve conflict is also very different. I had a hard time communicating my feelings back then, and Calvin didn't know how to validate feelings either. So it's hard to solve any issues when we are both actually clueless back then. When I tell Calvin about my problems, he would give me a 1 hour seminar about the solutions. And when Calvin is tired from work, I would nag him about random stuff. So basically, we didn't understand how to operate the relationship. And I'm quite surprised when I saw the survey from last Sunday that most people chose like love and respect for a healthy marriage. I think people know that this is good in theory and like love and respect is like important things. But I think in real life, people are just bucin. If you don't know bucin, bucin is budak cinta or like love slave. And I think even though we know that, oh yeah, we need respect in the relationship, but when we look at hot guys or sexy guys, tall, buff, and like yeah, just ganteng in general, we're like, oh, I'm in love, So I think that's what happens most of the time. Most like in most relationship, like sometimes we are not realistic, but yeah, I'm just very grateful and God is gracious. He opened up a path for the both of us to start knowing Him. About a year into our relationship, we both started studying the Bible, and in about a year, we were both baptized together. And we realized none of the checklists we had before matters. Now we are married for like almost 5 years, going 5 years, and none of like Calvin's checklist or like my checklist matters because like looks, yeah, we won't look good all the time, especially when we live together. We girls, we won't wear our makeup 24/7 and we won't dress up, and same for guys. So yeah, these worldly standards are just very temporary. I mean, if you can get it, it's a bonus, but it's not a priority.
So
And
I'm a bonus here. No kidding.
and I think we learned that it's not about how compatible we are. We are so different in so many different ways. We're just like two different people. And it's not about how many butterflies we had in our stomach. But it's about having the right foundation and values in God. And with these qualities, no matter what differences we have, we can go through it together. And now we can solve our communication issue with humility. We learn to understand each other better because God created us different with a purpose. We can turn our conflicts into something that we can grow in, and we can embrace our differences and use it to glorify God through our relationship. And now we can also pray together when something doesn't go our way. We are not using our strength anymore, but God's strength.
Yeah, and I think as we close up our sharing, I want to share one verse that I think really helped us in terms of having the right mindset and priority. It's from Matthew 7:24 to 27. It's about the wise and foolish builder. I'll just quickly share the verse here. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and put them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the stream rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. So, in terms of our relationship, I'm glad that that time of our dating time, we were able to study the Bible and really practice it, right? And when we were married, when we were engaged, there are a lot of winds and storm that came along, and we're happy that was on the rock, right? The journey, like I said, it wasn't smooth sailing. Even after that, after we studied the Bible and baptized, we're still human with our own sinful nature, but we know better. We understood God's design for a relationship, for a husband and wife, and that was the foundation we built upon. Initially it was about status, looks, interests, compatibility, but now we understand that those are nice to haves, like Olivia said, bonuses, right? But not the priority. And those worldly foundations can easily change as the situation change. But godly foundation is like a rock, like I mentioned in the verse. When the rain came down, the floods came, and the winds blew, it doesn't fall. So I would like to leave with these three final pointers. The first one is, it's not about being compatible, but it's about living and enjoying our differences, because God created us differently with our own uniqueness. It's not about having a perfect relationship, but it's about being able to solve problems together, because problems don't separate us further, but God uses that to bring us closer. And lastly, it's not about having the same taste, hobbies, or interests, but it's about having the same foundation and priority in God, because that foundation will determine how strong you can build your relationship. So that's it from our sharing. Thank you for the time and opportunity. Pass it back to Gio.
Olive, thanks for sharing, guys. Memang nggak ada couple lain yang embrace differences better than you guys, I think. Apalagi with your uniqueness, kah. Yeah, but serious note, gua really like the verse that you shared. Yang stood out for me was like, where do we build our foundation, the relationship, right? Is it on like a feeling, atau on status, atau yeah, even money or status gitu, which it can be gone gitu kan ya? We don't know, we have no control. Or do we build it on God gitu? I feel that kalau kita build it on God, yeah, that's the wise one, like that's the wise choice. So yeah, thanks for sharing, guys. We appreciate it. All right, so on to the next point. I want to share to you guys another model, yeah, that was also made from scientific research that talks about the different stages in a relationship. I hope you guys can understand the analogy lah ya. Harusnya kita 90s kids can understand. What is the main criteria that people usually look for when they begin dating? I'd say that it always starts probably with the yang paling kiri itu, infatuation, right? Infatuation dari attraction, from physical attraction gitu. And for me, that's how I felt, of course, with Pris kan. And I'm sure that's how Pris felt as well in the beginning, right? What is infatuation? It's a fired up kind of love. It's passionate, it's intense, tapi at the same time, it's also temporary. Over time, infatuation will die down, and it can either branch into love connection or mutual affection, right? And unfortunately, if it's a mutual affection and the other reconciliation, it will lead to disintegration. I'm gonna share each point now one by one biar lebih jelas. So what is infatuation? It's passionate love. It's ecstatic. Maybe the better analogy bukan Charizard tapi it's a wildfire, right? It's a fire yang just continues to burn, right? It doesn't need much maintenance. Gitu. One interesting point is that during this phase, gitu ya, it's kind of like a honeymoon behavior, even if it's a bit wrong, gitu, they don't affect our partner's attitude. Maybe it affects, tapi not very much, gitu. But yeah, like I mentioned tadi, research shows that this will last at only at most cuma doang gitu. I'm sure that say kita ask our parents, I would be surprised kalau ada our parents yang udah 50 years old masih feeling like this gitu. I believe mereka lebih feel the next one, right? And over time, ideally this love to grow into yang namanya love connection gitu. And the biggest difference between this one and the infatuation adalah now the love to be based on commitment, right? As the infatuation decline, the love becomes a little, less exciting, less passionate. Tapi at the same time, it's also more solid. It's more deep, right? And friendship will continue being gitu kan. the biggest difference adalah yang tadi gue bilang, in order for the love to be sustained, harus ada effortnya. Like the analogy is like log gitu. For the fire pumping in the log gitu kan. It no longer can burn fully on its own gitu kan. The feelings of love are now more grounded on reality. Our behaviors and attitude can affect our partners a lot more, especially if they're wrong. And sometimes the intimacy juga might not be there gitu, because now everything is transparent. We know a lot of things about one another. We know each other's weaknesses and impurities gitu kan. But during parties, they still push this desire to love gitu. And I think on that last point, yang nomor 4, one of the most important thing in this phase adalah the couple has the humility to admit weakness and they have a soft heart there. That's the biggest prerequisite, I think, when it comes to love connection. And just by making the slide, like just by thinking about love connection, I think we can all agree that this love connection is the more meaningful one gitu. It's more unconditional, right? Less circumstantial compared to infatuation. It's more noble, it's more godly. And I really like this quote that is really inspiring. Yeah. Love connection is the kind of love that is described in 1 Corinthians 13 in the Bible, yeah. Which is not based on the value of the recipient, but based on the character of a giver. I just think this is such an amazing quote. But I think it's such a great truth that I need to keep remembering gitu, in my relationship with Pris juga gitu kan. And I want to share more quotes, actually. One more from C.S. Lewis. This is his book Near Christianity. Classic books, like one of the most read, highest rated books when it comes to Christianity. And it goes like this, right? Now, no feeling can be relied on to last in its full intensity, or can last, principles last, habits can last, but feelings come and go. Goes on. The dying away of the first thrill will be compensated for by a quieter and more lasting kind of interest. You can let it die away, go death into the quieter interests and happiness that follow, and you will find you are living of this quote banget. Granted, yeah, that me and Pris, we're also not like an old couple. Like kita juga, we've only known each other for like 6 to 7 years, gitu ya. So we're not like someone super experienced. Tapi I'm very feel very blessed and very grateful that Pris and I too, maybe even though that kita gak bisa doing, especially like COVID gini ya, like we have to stay at home and we don't get to travel that much. But I do feel that we have our thrills and our joys even at home gitu. Ngurusin anak, even doing day-to-day, helping one another with work. And I feel like it's fulfilling. Yeah. I mean, we definitely want to travel. Kita definitely need to travel. But, like we can still find fulfillment even though kita masih di rumah. So I just want to share a little bit from C.S. Lewis, right? And so we talked about infatuation and the fired up love. Then we talked about love connection. Now we move on to the opposite of love connection, right? If we don't achieve love connection, where do we go? Now we end up in this area called mutual affection that can lead to disintegration, because the opposite basically, right? And mutual affection basically occurs when people they fail to discern that infatuation will die down to love connect, will eventually die down gitu. And they fail to growing the relationship, right? And it's kind of like we can bayangin, like in the book bisa dibayangin like it's like a roommates punya relationship gitu. We kind of don't want to lose each other, tapi intimacy-nya juga jauh berkurang gitu kan. And mutual affection, what happens is the spark. How come the spark is gone? And then we ask questions like, masa sih, why is loving someone this hard gitu? Love kan harusnya natural, right? And that's kind of like what happens when someone falls into the trap of mutual affection and gak mau put effort gitu. They think that love is just feeling doang gitu and not require effort. Padahal if we ask our parents, 100%, like they that pasti change gitu between when they were young and when they get older, right? And yeah, and sadly, I would think to or divorce gitu kan ya. So that's basically a top level view of these 4 points gitu kan ya, 4 stages lah. And I kind of just want to like lay out like kind of in each of these stages gitu. And I think we can all agree that kita semua pasti mau ke love connection, right? And it makes sense that to get there harus mulai dengan attraction dulu, dengan infatuation gitu. So I'm not dismissing attraction is not important gitu kan ya. But I think but knowing this model gitu, I'm more convinced that there's more important criteria than just attraction doang. I think that the areas yang in here gitu kan ya, kayak ada this is just an example which I wrote down, humility, commitment. I'd say it's more important because eventually, no matter what, our love relationship pasti bakal head there. But abis ini the Bible, right? Just on this. Tapi sebelum itu, gue mau pass it right to one of the most seasoned helped me and Chris as well during our crisis moment last time before we were married. Yeah, Vincent and Kuntal, go pass it to you guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Gio. As always, we're always amused by your slides.
The slide master,
So
Gio.
yeah, we'll try to share quickly. So yeah, by season, I don't know, like we might not be as seasoned by as our parents, but yeah, we are in a relationship for long time. So we dated since 2009. So it's been like almost 12 years. Yeah. So we actually.
It's like kimchi. We're well fermented.
Yeah, we're well fermented. Yeah. So I mean, like to give a background, like we dated before we really studied the Bible and become disciples. So we actually dated for like 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, before we
4 years
studied the
before
Bible.
before we studied the Bible. So at first, like we're really in that infatuation stage, you know, like where it lasts pretty long, and like we really prioritize each other all the time, and it's super easy, and it's been like that maybe for like 2 years. And like but then like we started at first glance it seems like it's good to prioritize each other, but like we didn't really realize that we moved past that infatuation stage. And like sadly we kind of moved towards the mutual affection stage instead of love connection, because like we really don't know how. I mean, we dated like a normal couple. I mean, we kind of lived together from time to time, and like we're just like, you know, like as Gio shared before, you know, like just follow the worldly wisdom, like where everything seems right, to just put each other's as number one. So yeah, but like during that mutual affection stage, like we even though we quote unquote prioritize each other, but like we actually move further apart. And maybe like I just want to let my wife to explain that stage in our relationship.
I guess like when we prioritize each other, we kind of put our hope and faith to one another, which is humans, right? And what happened with humans, they tend to fail us. They tend to disappoint us. And I know many of you guys, especially during COVID, is very familiar with Korean dramas. And I feel like Korean dramas is like a very good example, because like they're in infatuation period, and like the guys are very apa ya, focused on the women. They put all their priority, their hope, all in this one woman gitu, usually very centered in one person. And then we kind of have that expectation as well, when we put one another as the priority. So when I prioritize Vincent, I kind of hope he would do the same thing to me, or I would have this expectations just like guys in the Korean dramas. But guess what, there's a reason these Korean dramas are very popular because it's a fantasy. It doesn't make sense, and there's a reason Korean drama is usually air about 3 months, because after 3 months the infatuation period is gone. So it's not long lasting. Um uh it's not sustainable. So what happened after that is, just like what Gio shared, we have options. And if we continue to put one another as the priority, we just keep failing one another. But if we put our hope and faith and priority in God, we have different expectations there. And instead of expecting Vincent to put me as the priority, I expect Vincent to put God as the priority. Um, and since I prioritize God, God does not fail us. So it creates a different expectations, and then the expectation will be met, and then it will make the relationship makes a lot of sense, because then we're happy. Just like Gio's first few slides, the one with the happy emojis. Um, do you want to continue?
Yeah. So yeah, during our 4th year of dating, like we are like going towards the disintegration stage, because like we're thinking of breaking up, and like we actually broke up like once or twice maybe, like because our relationship is full of conflicts. I mean, like we keep on fighting, like throwing stuff, punching walls, and like yeah, it's like full of drama, because like we keep hurting each other, because of the unmet expectations. So it's getting tiring, even though we thought that by prioritizing each other it will help. But you know what, like when Crystal or like when I failed to meet the expectation, like we got really hurt and seems like we lost everything. And thankfully we got invited to a Bible study where like actually we learned a lot to prioritize God instead of prioritizing our partner. And like one of the most shocking verse that we learned during Bible studies, Luke 14, verse 26 to 27, which is like, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. At first glance, it's like crazy. You know what? Like, why should I hate like my father, mother, wife, children, etc? But like it's interesting here, actually God is Jesus is talking about priority. Like when you prioritize something so high on your list, it makes your second or third priority seems like we hate them, because we prioritize them way less. So like at first we don't really understand, but like a lot of people really help us in like implementing this. And like when me and Crystal like actually managed to put God as the number one priority, both of us really want to get closer to God. And like because of that, uh, my character is better. So does Crystal's. And then like we know our role in Christ, as a couple, which is to lift each other up. Like not only as like a lovey-dovey couple, but really like our relationship is meant to bring each other up. So like we try to keep putting that into practice. And you know what, like there's a lot of like speed bumps as well, but then thankfully the community keeps helping us and like keep trying to implement this, and actually like our relationship is healed. And like even though we already is going towards disintegration, like we got fixed. And like now we are more on the love connection stage. And like on the 3 years after we get baptized, actually like we got married, so like 7 years after we started dating. And like after that, like we don't really fight. I mean, conflict is always there, but because we prioritize Christ, we always know how to solve that issue spiritually, and not by like pushing our own egos. So yeah, I mean, like we really enjoy our relationship now. And yes, okay, I think already past the time. Go back to you, Gio. Thanks, bro.
It's okay, bro. Thanks, Vincent, and thanks, Kunto, for sharing about vulnerably, yeah, about the struggles that you had. Really appreciate that. I guess the moral of the story, jangan nonton K-drama, bro. I think there's just too much content, yeah. Especially Chris juga loves K-drama. But yeah, I really like what you shared about kayak apa sih, we prioritize one another, tapi ada disadvantage-nya juga kalau kita prioritize one another over God. Ntar kebetulan I have a slide on that, so I'm gonna share. I'm gonna respond a little bit more later, yeah. I'm on my last part of my sharing, but tadi I said that I
Oh, he's already here.
Oh.
Jadi lo di situ.
Hey, you guys can hear me, right? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, tadi kayaknya ada yang unmute. So I'm on my last part of my sharing. I just wanted to share Bible punya view on relationship, just one simple verse. And this is from Ephesians 5, 21 to 27. And this, just a disclaimer, memang this verse is, memang the chapter title is like instruction for Christian household. But I believe that if we read this, it's mainly talking about love, gitu. And actually, I think it applies to everyone. See. But basically, what it teaches is like this, right? First, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should also submit to their husbands in everything. Husband, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy. I think this is a very beautiful verse. In the Bible, many times it says that, oh, wives, you the leader of the couple is the husband. You have to submit to them. Gitu. Tapi from this verse, jangan lupa, it also says that what the husband have to do. Gitu. It has to love your wife and at the end, give himself up for her. Gitu. Which is basically, you have to lay, it means that your wife's life is more precious than yours. Gitu. Kalau if you have to give yourself up for her, right? And it's basically teaching about this selflessness aja sih, kayak dari both sides gitu, and I just think that's very beautiful gitu kan. And this is what maybe some of you already have been shared this model, yeah, from who joined GKDI atau gone to GEM, but I think this is a very good model for us to remind ourselves. Might be very encouraging. And a good reminder for my own relationship with Pris. Gitu. And the way the model works is like this, right? Me on one side and Pris, my wife or my partner on the other side. Gitu. Now, what happens is when I grow closer to God, automatically, I also grow closer to Pris as well, gitu, right? Because obviously God teaching kita selalu being selfless with one another, gitu. Jadi, if we approach God the right way and we try to obey the right way, automatically it's actually going to help our relationship gitu. Well, ideally our partner juga do the same, yeah. But sometimes one person have to start first gitu. Like in the case of my parents, one person has to start first gitu. And I think this makes total sense. When I worship or glorify myself, I don't see how gue bisa help Pris when I do that gitu. But instead, when I worship and glorify God gitu, and I prioritize God and I prioritize less about myself, I can really see how that will help also in my closeness sama Pris. So I think this is just a model yang very relate to Vincent sharing juga tadi gitu loh. Yeah, prioritizing one another bagus gitu, but I don't think it's the best. When we prioritize God, I think itu bakal that might be the best solution gitu, right? Because everyone's imperfect being. There are times when I'm gonna be wrong for sure, and there are times when my wife is gonna be wrong. Nah, di saat-saat itu, kalau nggak ada pegangan Tuhan, I think it will create some difficulty, I think, right? And I just think that this is just one of the benefits lah of kita having a God-centered relationship, right? Okay, so that's it dari gua. Now I'm gonna pass it to the final person who will share a bit more. Tadi kan we already have si Om udah sharing. So now I'm gonna pass it to one of the newest members of the crew. Gue bakal share pass to Simon and Amanda. Silakan guys.
Thanks, Gio. Really awesome. Hey guys. So yeah, for today, I want to share a little bit about my journey with Amanda relating to today's topic. So for you guys that don't know us, Amanda and I have actually been in each other's lives for over 10 years now. So after 8 years of dating, we got married, and a year after being married,
We both were baptized together and brought our marriage to God. So I would say that, like, prior to truly knowing God, our understanding of love was determined by the world, such as through pop culture. K drama is not really my thing, but maybe other stuff. Our family, friends, experiences, and most of all, our emotions. So our understanding and foundation of love came from things that change over time. The depth of was dependent on our feelings, which also change over time. And to top it off, we placed our value and worth by the way that we loved and treated the other. So yeah, this was clearly problematic, and the very root of things, as what we understood to be love, was imperfect, and it was reflected in how we expressed it to one another. So for the longest time before involving God, our relationship struggled because we demanded security from the imperfect love we knew and have for each other. So like in the past, like I remember, what would motivate me to express love to Amanda was my own self-interest. But what I came to realize was that oftentimes, like, what I cared about doesn't necessarily coincide with Amanda's needs. So I would claim that I love her, but it would never truly be reflected in my actions because I would still disregard her needs and do my own thing. So, for example, like whenever Amanda felt troubled and came to me worried or anxious, I would often just dismiss her because I didn't share the same concerns. I didn't know how to be there for her or give what she needed from me during that moment. And plainly, I didn't care enough to find out. So I often left her to just figure it out yourself. I remember clearly that when we were a mess and hurting one another, one of the questions that Amanda would often express to me would be like, you say that you love me, yet you treat me like this. This would often be left unanswered.
And yeah, when I felt hurt, I would feel justified to disrespect Sam. In the beginning, my arguments would be unhelpful, and at its worst, it would be emotional bursts intended to hurt him. I wouldn't care about the repercussions of my actions and words because it was directed and intended to hurt his pride as much as he hurt mine. But when that didn't work out the way that I thought it would, I would resolve to ghosting him, like ignoring his messages or his attempts to reconcile. So just like Sam would only love me on his own terms, I would also only serve him if he was serving me. I'd say after years of running the same toxic cycle, we reach a point in our relationship where we acknowledge that our love was just not enough for the other and realize just how broken we were as people. So we started off seeking God individually and allowed the Bible to determine what was the intended purpose of a marriage, not based on our own understanding and wisdom. And slowly we begin to see that it is not up to us or anything or anyone in the world to define love. The true author of the word love and its essence has always been God. For it is said in 1 John 4, verse 9 through 11, that God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real love. Not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. Through this verse, I realized that it is easy to serve another when they are also serving us. But the true test of love is how we serve the other when they are not necessarily serving us. This was the kind of love that I was called to have for Sam, because Jesus also shows this love through his obedience to die on the cross for us, not with a guarantee that we would reciprocate and repent from our sins, but in the hope that we would. So he basically paid the full price for a broken item without any guarantee that it would be fixed. It's the kind of love that, as mentioned before by Gio, that speaks more of the character of the giver and not the value of the recipient. So, how do we know we have treated our partners with love? 1 John 3, verse 16 says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters." I know it can feel weird to think of our partners as our brother or sister, but if we live in Christ as God's children, that is the truth. That Sam is a brother in Christ to me before he is my husband, and also that your wife is a sister to you. And if I claim to love my brothers and sisters the way God has commanded us to in this verse, then it is important for me to remember the duty of care that I have in expressing God's love to Sam so he can experience it to the full measure of it through me. For it is said in 1 John 4, verse 12, that no one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. So this truth really helped me a lot in my relationship with Sam, especially in serving him when my flesh doesn't want to, in respecting him even when we disagree, in caring for his emotions even though may have hurt mine.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so grateful as well that the example of love, like in 1 John verses just now, really opened my heart and encouraged me to see love for what it is. It's not self-centered, but focus on the needs of the other, and as difficult that may be. I see now that my heart was really hardened and conceited to have actually believed that I was loving Amanda, when the truth is I was only loving her when it was convenient for me, kind of like in my own way, in my own terms, and in my own time.
Yeah, I know we have a long way to go and to learn. We're infants in the mileage of marriage and discipleship. But I'm thankful that even in the short time we've known God and submitted our relationship to Him, we have both experienced a much healthier way of dealing with our disagreements. For example, Sam has learned to korek kuping and be a better listener. But in all seriousness, I really appreciate this because I know it doesn't come to him naturally. So whenever I'm starting to have anxious thoughts, he's there to listen to me lovingly. And whenever I feel like my emotions are starting to get the better of me, he helps me to persevere and bring me closer to God, even though he might not share the same concern.
Yeah, and likewise, I'm relieved that Amanda has stopped practicing her art of disappearing and ghosting me. But seriously speaking, like I've witnessed Amanda
Well, I
grow.
don't have a choice now.
All right. But seriously speaking, I've witnessed Amanda grow in her perseverance by learning to submit her anxious thoughts to God instead of allowing it to consume her. And now to say that we don't disagree anymore, it would be a lie and just unrealistic. Because after all, like no matter how compatible and considerate we are to one another, we're still two minds, two hearts, and two souls in this marriage. But we have begun to experience that when we lean into God and love one another the way that God has shown us, and keep playing our roles as husband and wives the way God has called us to, then there will be unity in our marriage and we can truly live life as one flesh. So, that's our sharing for tonight, guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam and Amanda. Apa, thank you for being humble and being vulnerable, guys, for your sharing. I said, yeah, for what you shared are just some really good lessons on loving the partner tuh harus kayak gimana gitu ya. Mau itu marriage or even like boyfriend or maybe so we have instruction apa the audience can have apa instruction lah like for even if they for their future partners gitu ya. So thanks a lot for your sharing, guys. Yeah, and basically that's the end of the talk. I just want to sum about these are just the summary, but the 3 points are: the first one is impossible to find someone compatible with you. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship, and the strength of a relationship depends on willingness to grow, not compatibility. Building foundation on God's principle will also prepare us for when facing storms, like what Calvin shared that. Number two, we can also invest and focus more on love connection, not just on infatuation. Even though infatuation gak ada salahnya, but we can acknowledge that love is not just a feeling; it is also more importantly God's command. It's commitment, humility, and selflessness at times as well. It's not like all automatic. And also, finally, like what Sam and Amanda shared, gitu ya, the true definition of love can be seen through Jesus aja. When we get closer to God in the right way, kita juga automatically get closer to one another, like that triangle tadi. So itu aja, guys. So that's my sharing, and now we're gonna end the talk there, but we're also gonna have some breakouts, and these are the questions. Um, yeah. So yeah, have you experienced or sought firsthand an ideal relationship that you hope for? Describe it to your group. Number two, after this talk, how is your belief in the validity of soulmates? Yeah. What do you think makes for a successful relationship? What qualities do you or did you seek for in a relationship? And finally, kaya think about how could God being in the center of the relationship too, how can it make a difference? What are like some benefits that you feel that you can experience? And share some examples as well. And yeah, DJ, you can help me because people should be, because we
Yes.
have.
Yes, sure. So we're going to go to breakout rooms now. Is that right, Gio? Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go to the breakouts, guys. Please do stick around, and would love for you to engage in this conversation. So we'll have those questions sent into the Gem Talk group as well. And yeah,